During the 1990s, 3 Nobel laureates in medicine advanced research that revealed the primary function of DNA lies not in protein synthesis as widely believed for the past century, but in electromagnetic energy reception and transmission. Less than 3% of DNA's function involves protein manufacture. More than 90% functions in the realm of bioacoustic and bioelectric signaling. So why is it important to know that DNA functions in bioelectric signaling? HeartMath Institute has discovered the heart and brain maintain a continuous two-way dialogue, each influencing the other's functioning. Although it is not well known, the heart sends far more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart, and the signals the heart sends to the brain can influence perception, emotional processing, and higher cognitive functions. The heart also generates the strongest rhythmic electromagnetic field in the body, and this actually can be measured in the brainwaves of people around us. We are quite literally an electromagnetic expression of our highest cognitive function. The behavior of electromagnetism is evident throughout the world as dualism. All matter contains a negative and positive charge, which means organisms are built upon this foundation. The natural homeostasis of any organism is a balance of both polarities. Furthermore, research on emotional energetics shows that the heart's field is a carrier of emotional information and a mediator of bioelectromagnetic communication within and outside the body. Research shows our heart's field changes distinctly as we experience different emotions. It is registered in people's brains around us and apparently is capable of affecting cells, water, and DNA studied in vitro. Fear. The chemical supplied by a collective parasite creates a distinct bioelectric signal given off by the host. This signal is disseminated to the organisms within our community and will grow outward through the entire organism unless it is counterbalanced by an opposing force. Dr. Fritz Alan Popp discovered that the cells in our body communicate through biophotons, which are tiny particles of light that are single units of an electromagnetic field. This communication system within our body also exists between people in what's known as morphic resonance. This was known by the shamans, sages, and adepts of antiquity. These teachings were commonplace in prehistoric cultures. It wasn't by sheer chance that artistic expression and rituals were the cornerstone of every ancient civilization. Art was used as a personal method to exercise the shadow content of the psyche and introduce it to the conscious mind. This was very literally viewed as psychic therapy. Ritual was based around astrological dates. As we've learned, the study of the stars and planets reflect our own astropsychology. The shamans would perform rituals on astrological dates that would correlate with a circadian rhythm or a psychological cycle. These rituals kept the human participants aware of their inner self and prevented the repression of psychological content. As long as people were facing their inner demons and accepting them as their own, they were not collectively projecting them into the physical world. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. The progeny of our psychological disease began growing rapidly after a series of catastrophes forced the collective into a somatic state of fight or flight. This lowered the immunity of the population by introducing a state of immense stress. Our body becomes more susceptible to illness under stress. In this manner, humanity fell ill when entire bodies of land were swallowed up by the floodwaters. This uprooted many tribes, chiefdoms, and civilizations from their homes, and their ritual practices that were used as a conduit for psychic wellness were put on hold in order to survive the catastrophe and seek new homes. The shamans were spread to many new areas of the world. This information has been suppressed. We are made to believe that advanced civilizations such as ancient Egypt and the Mayans of Mesoamerica came about with no prior rudimentary remnants or evidence of evolving intellectual artifacts to bring them to their peak. We are meant to believe that their incredible knowledge of mathematics, astrology, agriculture, economy, polity, and architecture came out of nowhere. This leads many researchers today to the understanding that the origins of these civilizations have been suppressed. Not surprisingly, the force that has guided the suppression of this knowledge comes from the exact bloodline of the political and religious leaders stated previously. These are some of the notable book burnings and suppression of important texts in our history. Yet after all of this suppression, there are still remnants of the dispersion of elder civilizations in nearly every country. There is tremendous evidence of ancient cultures visiting North America long before the conventional belief of European colonization. Barry Fell states in his book America BC, there are ancient inscriptions now being reported from nearly all parts of the United States, Canada, and Latin America, written in various European and Mediterranean languages in alphabets that date from 2,500 years ago. William Commonus Beaumont wrote, "The Toltec and Maya civilizations never originated on American soil, but appeared there full-blown, with a well-defined art and system of hieroglyphic writing which possesses affinities with Egyptian. It is found that there are thousands of prehistoric sites across New England and several other northern states showing inscriptions, carvings, and mounds created by Druidic mariners as far back as 800 BC. To suppress this information further, it was not only imperative for the bloodline to burn the documented texts containing true historical information, but to wipe out the cultures that derived from these ancient shamans. The most devastating genocide ever endured was and still is the annihilation of shamanic tribes.
We've lost our traditional roots and don't know about ritual. The dragon dances and the ghost dances of the Native American Indians, what do you think that was all about? All the shamans of the world, when they do their rituals, they're doing that. Their work, harmonically through dances, is to strengthen the immune system of the earth. But they've been all murdered. So that was why in the 17th century, exactly the same period I'm talking about, there was an all-out agenda that when you come across indigenous people, you annihilate them.
Columbus was sent on his expedition along with agents of the crown to disrupt the lives of the natives and seize mineral resources. He visited every island in the Caribbean, depleting the gold and taking as many slaves of the native Taino tribe as possible. 5 million natives were murdered within 3 years, according to Leah Trabeck. Within 15 years, the Arawak tribe of 250,000 was completely wiped out. The population of the United States prior to European contact was greater than 12 million. 4 centuries later, the count was reduced by 95% to 237,000. From 1494 to 1508, over 3 million people had perished from war, slavery, and the mines. Who in future generations will believe this? I myself, writing this as a knowledgeable eyewitness, can hardly believe it. My eyes have seen these acts so foreign to human nature, and now I tremble as I write. Another agent of the false ego bloodline was Hernando Cortez, who decimated the Aztec tribe and plundered their mineral resources. This again was the case through Cortez's second cousin, Francisco Pizarro, who conquered the Incan Empire in Peru. These atrocities are seen throughout Africa, New Zealand, New Guinea, East Timor, and are still seen today in Canada. This was a deliberate attempt to bury any surviving remnants of the ancient world and our true history. It is a naive mistake, however, to categorize and blame everything and everyone involved with politics or religion for this suppression of knowledge. It is only natural for people to crave spiritual understanding when there are so many manufactured missing links and perversions in the spiritual texts today. And due to this void of spiritual wisdom, honest and moral people who are simply trying to understand their place in this world become the prime consumer market for those who wish to exploit this vulnerability.
The ego is something that is it's insecure. It's something that is in need of control. The ego actually is an inferior thing, but it's trying to act like it is something that is superior. Hence this schism occurs between the ego and between the unconscious or the self. There's a kind of a messiah complex at work here as well, I feel, that we project the savior type ideal on someone, and we expect them to save us, and we're not willing ourselves to kind of deal with this and get to the root of why we perhaps feel insecure, or why we feel we don't have enough power to run our own lives, basically. If we look at the New Age movement, for instance, which is another kind of trap in all of this, where people might end up, actually, they're looking for something so bad that they're taking all these things that are handed to us or to them, but it's not really based on any real understanding. It's still kind of coming from a religious type of perspective. People are genuinely seeking something new. They're genuinely seeking a new type of spirituality, or to better themselves, or to change something, but this is being hijacked. And what they actually do is that they lead you into another type of group mentality, or a New Age religion, whatever it is, and people still are not able to kind of really break free from that and follow their own journey or their own path, which I think is very important in all of this.
In the pre-Christian era, there were several cults of incredible power, most notably the stellar, solar, Saturnian, lunar, and mushroom cults. It is simple to see that worshippers of the lunar goddess comprised of the lunar cult. The worship of sun gods were indicative of the solar cults. The Saturnian cult, which consisted of Phoenicians and Canaanites, worshipped El or Eli. The biblical exodus of the Hebrews from Egypt showed that they entered Canaan and merged the lunar cult of Isis, the solar cult of Ra, and the Saturnian cult of El to form Isis, Ra, El. Israel. The old Israelitish cult and mythology, the Yahweh worship, the patriarchal legends, the sojourn in Egypt, and so on, are rooted in the religion of the sacred fungus, developed from the underlying fertility philosophy of the ancient Near East. The Jewish mitre, Muslim turbans, and military berets are derivations of the symbol of the mushroom cult. One of the first and most prominent, however, was the stellar cult, and a number of these ancient cults were created for shamanic purposes and earthly stewardship, yet some were taken over with different intentions. Just as you would imagine in any establishment of power, smaller cults formed within the main cults to worship individual deities. The cult of Mithras and the cult of Dionysus are two examples. You still today can see the Mithraic or Phrygian cap on the symbol of the seated Liberty dollar, the coat of arms of many countries, the reverse side of the flag of Paraguay, the seal of the United States Senate, and even involved in the solar cult holiday that we now call Christmas. In the cult of Dionysus, many festivals were celebrated, such as the Greater Dionysia, celebrated in Athens around the spring equinox. The foremost event in this festival was the Thymelic contest, in which poets, musicians, and entertainers performed in an open-air theater. Musicians did not have to pay taxes, and members of the Artists Guild did not have to participate in military affairs. The cult of Dionysus is still alive to this day as the entertainment industry. These cults still exist in many important positions of power throughout the entire civilized world. Yet the most important function of these groups is to manufacture the consent and complicity of the people.
The conscious mind is the creative mind. It's the one that has your personal identity into it. It does the real thinking. And then there's a subconscious mind. Well, there's no entity in it. The subconscious mind is the equivalent of a tape player. It records behaviors, and then at the push of a button plays the behavior. It's automatic. It's a very convenient thing, because then we don't have to relearn all the time. Once you know it, you can make a pattern. The problem is that the basic patterns of belief and behavior that are programmed in the subconscious mind came from our teachers, primarily our parents, our family, and our community.
So most people don't even understand how easily we're influenced by our environment. Every person that we encounter, every single situation that we're faced with, every little word that's said on television may not seem too influential to our conscious minds, but your unconscious is designed specifically to let every environmental signal influence you without your awareness. So the question is, are we leading conscious or unconscious lives?
And now neuroscience has told us in the unfolding of our lives, only 5% of our life is controlled by our conscious mind, and 95% of the time controlled by the subconscious with programs from other people that were installed in there. And the problem is, it means when those programs are playing, we don't see them.
And the skeptics will sit there and say, consciousness, archetypes, astrology? No. We create things with our hands, not our minds. Archetypes aren't physical. They can't influence me. But when you think of the fact that we're only conscious of this small little fraction of our behavior, what we don't realize is that entire countries, entire civilizations that think they're free and independent, but are unconsciously too afraid to be free and independent, they will beg to be governed. And if they can't do it themselves, who do you think will consciously or unconsciously take that responsibility? It usually ends up being that strong, masculine, animus archetypal figure. When we think we're in danger, we're not looking for our mother to nurture us. We want our father to protect us. And right on cue with the age of fear, this age of catastrophe, the age of this parasite, we see masculine domination. And one of the primary conduits for giving our responsibility and our conscious energy away is money. We surely don't want to admit that our dependency on money is flawed, because that would imply that the fault is our own. And God forbid we take responsibility for our lives, so we blame the money.
This is the cornerstone of the entire illusion being built around us by the false ego. Money is said to be the root of all evil, yet it cannot be evil because money is only a symbol. Symbols carry only the faith and spirit of the observer. This means that the symbol of paper money evokes and surfaces the evil intentions and inherent flaw of our false ego. Money only exists because we agree to accept it as valuable. And to further illustrate our incapacity for freedom, we've given the control of our faith-based money to a private corporation instead of the federal government. There is no law stating that we have to use Federal Reserve notes as currency. We choose to because we fear the alternative: independence.
But it's not even really about money, it's about energy, because money is simply this material thing that allows billions of people to crave just one thing and put their energy into the same thing. It's not the plasma TV or the house or the lifestyle or the job or the significant other or the status that we're really after, because we know that we're empty. These people feel sadness and loneliness and void just like anybody else. And they either want to fill that void with materialism because they think that that'll make them feel better, or they want to sedate the void feeling with material possessions. So it all comes back to this feeling of having to put our dependency into an external source, something that we have absolutely no control over.
What we're seeing right now is with all the competition of each other destroying each other, wars, competing for material existence, raping the planet and tearing it apart to get some pieces of it to hold in your hands and say you won the game. Every one of those moves is destructive, not just of the planet, but of human civilization, because human civilization will thrive with cooperation and will die with competition. And if you operate from these truths, then you end up with the extinction that lies before us.
You see, we all have demons, so to speak. We all have inner demons in our lives, but we expect to see devilish monsters or dark apparitions when you think of a demon, kind of like what you'd see in the cinema. But our demons are really the people in our everyday lives, the people that we argue with, the people that we envy or hate, the ones we physically or emotionally harm in some way, shape, or form. And it's not because we envy or hate qualities in these specific people as much as we hate the fact that they remind us of ourselves. They reflect qualities about ourselves that we wish we had more of, or that we wish we didn't have at all.
So what do? We alleviate that pain not by fixing or fighting our own demons, but by harming the people that remind us of our demons, by harming the people that remind us of the things that we don't like about ourselves. And when we become frustrated that we're not in control of our emotions because we don't really know what's affecting our emotions, we take it out on others. We take it out on absolutely anything else that can show us or act as a catalyst for our hatred. And so we do the same thing to animals. Animals are perfect because they can't defend themselves. And it's a perfect catalyst for our inner aggression, our confusion, our hatred. Just take it out on something absolutely helpless. Just imagine how unconscious a person has to be of his or her actions to torture or mutilate or brutalize any living thing.
The goat's down, and he'll be here, and we can. Ouch! Come on.
He bit you.
Look at his tail. Is it Conan with their kids, maybe?
He's a big guy.
That's a real.
Think of the lack of compassion you must have towards life in general to be able to feel no semblance of sympathy towards entire populations, let alone just individuals or individual animals, entire populations of species that are bred specifically for the purpose of commodity. But I'll tell you what's even more dangerous is not so much the people carrying out this cruelty, because that's already been established. That form of hatred and cruelty has already been established and it's already known. What I'm really worried about is the people who are against inhumanity, the people who are against animal cruelty and feel self-righteous enough to think that it's justified to inflict harm or even wish harm on these people. Because those are the people who take unconscious cruel behavior to a whole new level of conscious cruel behavior that's perfectly acceptable in their minds, because they feel that it's their job to bring other people to justice, like they're an authority figure of some sort. Those are the people who will have a much harder time figuring out why they harbor so much inner hatred and resentment. They don't seem to realize that it's just another form of the same exact hatred. So to keep from facing our inner demons consistently, what do? When we begin to realize, hey, wait a minute, maybe it's not alright to inflict harm on any other living thing, then the ego has to come up with a more esoteric form of cruelty to trick us into displaying the same form of self-hatred, the same indignant attitude, but just in another way and towards another group of people. But the emptiness will always find a way back in, and people will always start to feel restless again, no matter how many times they transfer blame to yet another person or yet another group. We need chaos in our lives. We crave destruction. We beg for catastrophe. Because if we don't have these things to act as a form of exorcism or a catalyst for us, we start to notice these things in ourselves, and that's what we don't want. You see, we can deal with wars. We can deal with terrorism. We can deal with stock market collapse and economic collapse. We can deal with these things. But once we start to notice this chaos within ourselves, that's what we're really afraid of. We'll take 1,000,000 September 11ths over one moment of true insight towards our self-hate. And you know, the most interesting part of all of this is we encounter things every day, every single day, that we either accept with open arms or that we reject violently. The interesting part is not really what we're accepting or rejecting as much as what it is inside us that makes us feel compelled to a certain thing or repelled from a certain thing. There's this fundamental dual behavior of muscular strength or weakness, attraction or repulsion. And what's interesting about this is When you realize that consciousness, awareness, that intangible essence that animates all matter into what we see around us as life, that is where you will find the origin of this dual behavior. It's been explained as the inhalation and exhalation of Brahma, the contraction and the expansion of Ahriman and Lucifer in an anthroposophical setting, the active and the passive qualities in electricity, the masculine and feminine qualities, yin and yang, existence and nothingness. These are all ways to explain the same behavioral process that begins with awareness, it begins with consciousness. And if you get rid of all the images and concepts in our minds of these sayings in your head and just try to feel the difference between the two polarities, you'll begin to notice that all of the different scenarios and possibilities that are playing out in the world all spawn from this common origin. You'll have a million people telling you why the Bible is supposedly the Word of God and that you should follow it word for word. And then you'll have another million claiming that it's a form of mind control and not to believe any of it. Everybody will tell you to beware of this or watch out for that. This is good information, this is bad information. And I just have to wonder, what makes anyone an authority figure enough to say that something is true or false? And why are you denying or accepting anything based on the suggestion of another person? Why aren't you making that decision for yourself? Information is information. There's no such thing as good or bad information. It's all what you do with it. I say let everything be your Bible. Give every piece of information, every person, every event or scenario or situation an honest and open mind. Because then it's your responsibility to respond to it in the way that you choose. Not following the herd, not following convention, it's your responsibility. And that's the point when, no matter how many people tell you you're wrong or right, you're not dependent upon their approval. If we at least question our own actions, question our own thought process, and make a conscious decision to what we feel is right every single day, that's what I believe to be divinity. That's true shamanism. And that, to me, is what it really feels like to be alive.
In this conscious, living universe, there are no laws of nature, just habits. There is nothing external to the universe to enforce a law upon it. The illusion of a fixed law of nature is only the result of there being no need for that habit to be broken. When habits need to be broken to ensure the survival of the organism, we see this event in nature and call it evolution. The collective mind shapes our evolution. And a great example of this is the experiment done by John Cairns in 1988. His team put lactose-intolerant cells in an environment with only lactose for food. Under a law of nature, every one of these lactose-intolerant cells would have died. But surprisingly, they all survived. Every one of them understood the problem that they were facing and replaced the defective lactase enzyme with a functioning one to utilize lactose for food. If a cell has the ability to decide how and when to evolve because it's facing extinction, then anything can.
The existing beliefs are that a human body is a biochemical machine controlled by genes, and therefore the behavior, emotions, and character of our biology, our health, our lives, are controlled by genes which we don't control. So this is what we taught people. You're a victim. Genes control your life. You didn't pick them. You can't change them. The genes you end up with program what's going to happen. My experiments on stem cells, which I started in 1967, I'd isolate one stem cell, put it in a petri dish, and then it would divide every 10 hours. So I took all the cells, split them up into 3 groups, and then just put them in 3 petri dishes. And then I changed the growth medium, the constituents of the environment, in each of the 3 dishes. In one dish, the cells form bone. The second dish, they form muscle. In a third dish, they form fat cells. What controlled the fate of a cell? And the first thing you have to say is, well, wait, they were all genetically identical when they were put in a dish. So obviously the genes didn't control it because they all had the same genes. What was different was the environment. And all of a sudden in my career it said, oh my gosh, here I am teaching genes control life, and the cells are telling me genes respond to life. And since you can control the response, you can control your life. It's how you read the environment, how your mind perceives the environment. And if you understand this, then you could lead yourself to the most wonderful expression on this planet, to be fully alive and fully healthy by just how you respond to the world.
In the face of financial collapse across the world, political and religious wars raging tirelessly, and an ever-growing feeling of being lost and void of meaning, there is a great amount of energy being pushed to the surface of the collective mind. Evolution does not come about gradually. It happens in spurts and fits, and comes about due to a tremendous need for the organism to survive. We are now at a point in history where we will choose. We will choose to become sovereign or remain dependent, to face our true self or continue fighting a ghost, to become well or allow this disease to grow, to live or to die. The choice is yours.